Hey, I'm Daniel Berger, and this is Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Welcome to the podcast where Metro New York real estate meets great stories and a douse of humor. Forget the dry sales talk. Here we dive into the fun and unexpected moments of real estate. Join me each week as we explore Westchester, Long Island, the Bronx, and more. You'll hear about the people, the places, and the crazy situations that make this industry so interesting. Thanks to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, we're ready to share the lighter side of real estate. Whether you're a pro, a buyer, or just curious, we've got something for everyone. Ready for today's adventure? Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. Today, I'm excited to have on Nick Harris. His journey started in fitness and now he's in real estate. But in the end of the day, both businesses are probably about relationship building. He started off really quickly and he has like a plan on how he went from 0 to 100 deals in 18 months. I'm excited to hear about that and other things that he's learned along the way. And with that, Nick, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Daniel. I'm excited to dive into this.
So it's in a couple things as I was doing some research on you. So whether it's fitness, it's real estate or what have you, right? Ultimately, isn't it really about providing the best quality of customer service to your clients in whatever industry you happen to be in?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that correlate between where I started in the fitness industry and then getting into real estate. I think number one would be the client service, giving that white glove service. There's trends within, they're both sales positions as well. You have to fill your pipeline, you have to fill your daily schedule with clients. And I think the other side of that as well is you do have a lot of hand holding for both, right? For a lot of people, it's a light of going to a therapist. They feel like they need a vent, they need to let things out, and we have to know how to bring that back and communicate super well. And that was the case for both. So I didn't know that going into, I didn't know that transition from the fitness space would transition so well into real estate, but it has.
That was a good point. I think we do need a CPT code so that as we're doing our real estate and we're providing a psychoanalysis or family therapy or what have you, that we should be allowed to every now and then charge a couple of codes to their insurance to help out before we get to the closing table. That I think we're on to something.
I'll 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 sign your
We,
petition. I'm right
we
behind
should
you.
probably create an app that can do that to easily start billing along the way,
Yeah.
because that is what it's really about. I guess the difference of, so if you were, I guess fitness, you could clearly, did you work in a traditional gym? That's where you did your fitness, or was it more in home?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. So when I first got out of college, I got my degree in health and exercise science. I played college baseball, so I came from a background of athletics. I played every sport in high school. And so when I got out of college, I started working as a strength conditioning coach. So I was working with middle school, high school, college athletes, and then made a transition to being a personal trainer at the Diamond Club where I was, and it was more so personal training. And high income earners, people that either them, their spouse that I was training. And so it turned in from like group training to more one-on-one. And then it transitioned into a lot of people wanted me to do more in home or at their country clubs where they had a gym. And so a lot of it did transition into I was doing a little bit of both. I was doing some at the gym, I was doing some in home, going to clients' locations. So I've covered a little bit of everything between group and one-on-one and in an actual brick and mortar or at their home and traveling to them.
Yeah, because that's the point, is as you're moving to the brick and mortar into those other things, you're basically expanding the time frame that you can do, that you can train, right? So clearly then you're becoming many more hours, which is also, that was my point of, that's what we have, right? Where you can be real estating almost all the time because you're having Zooms and calls and meetups with clients that can go very late, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You have to do research on what properties, what areas they want, and so it's the real estate for the people that think about real estate. They think, oh, it's the least 9 to 5 job probably there is. And partly because it's about the relationship build, right? And so
Yeah.
we have clients that are work different shifts. And so if someone's working the night shift, they might be wanting to interact with you at night. And so it's like you're always doing stuff. It's 24/7 basically.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I realized as well. I got into real estate, and I think most real estate agents do. They get into real estate because they think you're your own boss. You have some time and location freedom. You can work the hours that you want. You can say no at the hours you don't. And then you quickly realize that, okay, yes, I'm my own boss, but I'm the only one keeping myself accountable. And your hours are not your hours. They're your client's hours unless you're structuring your business properly and accordingly. And so that was one thing that I got into. And at the time that I got into real estate fairly young, was newly married, didn't have any kids. I had the flexibility. Still married, have two daughters now, and my time is slowly dwindling in what I have in a day. Not only what I'm capable of, but also what I want to do. And so that was a big piece for me was, okay, how can I restructure my day? Because it was exactly that. It was wake up at 5 in the morning and I'm responding to text messages and emails from the night before. And I'm up until midnight writing contracts or answering questions for buyers and sellers. And I had to restructure what I was doing, but got into it with the thought of, hey, I need some time and location freedom. Didn't have that until I actually worked on it.
The one problem that you're going to have is also as a fitness guru, you're going to need to carve out some time during the day for you to work out on your own body and mind. Me being old, heavy, and out of shape, I don't have that much time. So I don't really need to do that. So it gives me a little bit more time to real estate. But I'm what am I, 56 years old, and I've been doing this about 9 years. So as like a second or third career, it's a little different because I think with I coach my kids, both of my children in sports, and so you do need to carve out more time to do those activities. As an empty nester, I have my two dogs, so I work that in. Ultimately, I probably do have more time now. So it really everything's cyclical too, right? So it's cyclical about my life as so now I have much more time available. My view is if you look at my Zillow reviews, people or Google reviews, people would say that I'm always available because that's what makes me better, different, and special is that I'm always available. But I think also you're allowed to move people into the times that make sense for you, right? So if someone sends you a message and you're like, I got it, and this is when I'm going to return the message, or when or set up a time to do that. So I think you are able to push the times, especially if you're good at communicating, right? People don't want to be left in the lurch. Did you get that message? Are you helping me? As opposed to giving them, when's a convenient time that we can schedule something? Generally, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So two things that I did that tremendously helped give me more time and to actually give the still give the service that my clients wanted, which was quick communication, having conversations and actually being heard. And one of them being the voicemail that I have. So if you were to call my phone right now, it's very clear in my voicemail. If it takes you to my voicemail, it's going to give you very clearly, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm sorry I couldn't get to my phone right now. If you're calling me between the hours of X and Y, I'm currently prospecting or marketing for my buyers and sellers. I'll have an opportunity between X and Y to get back with you, and I'll make sure to do. If you're calling me past the hour of 5 p.m., if this is an emergency, please reach out to my assistant. Here's her number. If not, I'll get back to you the next business day. And like that sets the expectation right there. They know the time frames I'm in. And before even doing that, though, it comes down to setting the expectation ahead of time, either in your buyer consultation or in your listing appointment of, hey, I'm here for you. I also have a personal life, right? And most people will understand that. I'm at the point where if people don't understand that and they want me around the clock service, it's not the right fit client for me. And so setting the expectation, a buyer consultation, a listing presentation ahead of time on how you're going to communicate, when you're going to communicate, how those things go. And then past that is set a voicemail, be very clear. And you can do that on a daily basis. I coach some agents who they set a voicemail every single morning, depending on what their day looks like. And they go in and they set a voicemail for that day. Hey, I'm going to be doing in appointments from this time to this time. I'll have some flexibility between here. The next thing that I would do in a text message, because a lot of people use text message right now, is they'll send over a question or they'll send over a property. And if you have an iPhone, you can set pre-formatted or pre-templated text message where you go into your settings, general keyboard, and you can do a text replacement. So what that looks like is if you're going to be in appointments, I have a standard text template that I use that says, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm currently in an appointment, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And it's a text message. Instead of going in and texting that every single time, you can put a shortcut for it. So you just put in the number one, or you can put like F dash U for follow up or whatever you want to do, right? And all you do is type in that number one and it automatically fills out that text message. You hit send. And so it's a quick way to get back with people where they know, hey, Nick's currently in an appointment or he's in a meeting or he's doing X, Y, and Z. He's going to get back to me shortly. But it keeps that level of communication where it's not like you're not speaking to them for a couple of hours. They hear from you right away and I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can.
I think that's good. And also, you also have the voice app, right? So you also can do voice to text. So you can
Yeah.
just basically say what your message is and get back. What's interesting is when you're a newer agent, I, I would say that my view as a coach or mentor would be available more often, right? So what you've just done is really more from a season, and so because you're doing hundreds of hundred deals a year, and you're doing that, you are you do have a cachet that you can let people know this is the schedule. If we're going to be a good fit for each other, these are the parameters. So I think that's a fair thing. I think if you were newer, you need to get people to want to work with you, right? From
Yeah.
when they look at your online presence, wow, that Nick Harris guy, man, he is the bomb and I need to work with him. And so I'm going to allow that because to be fair, when people send you a text about a specific property, while I do like to get on it right away and say, is it available, not available? When can we meet? When can we go see it? I Part of me is that I like to do it quicker, but ultimately you can put things into different time periods because for the most part, well, it's been a little crazy the last couple of years, but for the most part, a house that comes on the market, it's not like you need to see it in 3 minutes. So you do have a little bit of time to be able to understand more about the house. So I think doing it really quickly and putting it into compartments, I think both can work, as long as you're communicating and letting clients know. And as you said, I don't really do buyer appointments. I basically onboard them and then we go, and as I probably do more of that at the first call. So at the first showing, I'm probably giving more, this is how we're going to do it, or this is how it's going to work. But I do try to custom build the buying experience or the seller experiencing based off of who's in front of me and what are their needs and wants. And because again, and you're doing the same thing, because if it's about a relationship build, it's not what I want, it's not what they want, it's together. How can we purchase or sell a house together? And I do say that our job as brokers is not really just to open doors, right? So that is a part of it, obviously, to open doors. And if you just needed a door person, then you wouldn't need you or me, right? You would do a much more junior person who would open the door for you and you'd figure it out. But our job is negotiating. I always tell people it's so much less about the house and so much more about the people.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree 100%. Right. And that's what makes people stand out as well. Right. It's the communication, it's the white glove service, it's how do you interact with people? Because and at the end of the day, they're going to be living in that home. And whether they saw 100 homes or 20 homes or one home, it doesn't matter. Their home ended up being their home. They're not going to remember the doors that you opened or the seller disclosures that you gave them. And all of those things are important. But what's more important is how you make them feel throughout the transaction. And that is what gets them to come back to you and use you again, and also to refer you people that they know.
Right. So that 100%. So it's interesting. So I know that you did your white glove service in your fitness business because you're not going to have every person that you're training is not going to be so like, oh my God, I'm going to my nutrition, I'm going to train, I'm going to run, I'm going to. So there are some people that are like, I just want to get toned a little bit, or I just want to have some. Can you guide me through this? And a lot of what you did wasn't even probably the work that you did with them as they were lifting the weights or doing whatever. You're just really more pushing them into the regimen and showing them what the workout's supposed to look like. And the rest of it is probably the mental aspect of preparing people to change, right? So a lot of workout is right, or is to get into a regimen or to change from what they did before to what you as a professional feel that they need to do to get to what their goals are. Everyone has different goals.
Yeah, spot on. Yep, spot on.
So talk to me about the 0 to 100 deals in 18 months. And I know a lot of what you do is based off of automation. I'm probably a little bit not automized. It's probably more me doing it. I also, for me, like last year, I did 65 deals. So I don't know. It also depends on price points, right? So different markets have different price points, but that's 100 is a tremendous amount of activity. So how did you go from 0 to 100 and how are you doing right now?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, right, I got into real estate fairly young. I know I mentioned that. Got into it fairly young. I didn't have sphere of influence who were even buying homes, right? Like even my friends weren't even first-time home buyers right away. And obviously being new into the business, you have family members, of course, and the question becomes, are they going to trust you with their biggest asset just because they're your their son or their grandson or their niece or nephew, right? And that was nice. I had a couple of transactions there from people who know, like, who knew and trust me from the very beginning. But I started to interview and have conversations with top producers, not only in my market, but also across the US, picking anyone's brain who would allow me, right? And what I tried to do is come up with what are the common themes? What are the things that they're doing? Whether it's lead generation, whether it's follow up, whether it's client service, whether it's closing gifts, what does that look like? What are common themes that people are doing? And then I started implementing that into my business. And one of the things that I realized very quickly on is that the most successful agents generally have an ideal client avatar. They have an ideal person that they want to work with, whether it's a specific property, whether it's only multifamily rental properties. Is it single family residential? Is it a condo? Is it apartments? What does that look like? Starting from there, they also have an idea of they only work these price points. Price points. They also work with only this type of geographic or demographic. And so that was what I picked on really early. And I said, okay, what do I like to do? What do I have knowledge in? I wasn't even a first-time home buyer. So I didn't even feel like I could speak to first-time home buyers because I hadn't gone through that process. But at the time, I had been educating myself for a handful of years on real estate investing and what that looked like to be a real estate investor with single family homes. And so I had a good amount of knowledge around that. And I had some experience because at that time I had actually bought my first rental property before I bought my primary residence. And so I could speak to that a little bit better. And so I went after that ideal client avatar. I did everything that I could to put myself in the room in the same world as where those investors were that were going to be looking in my local market. And so I got very crystal clear on who I wanted to work with. Because when it becomes really crystal clear on who you want to work with, the opportunities and the doors and the windows start to show and you just walk into them. Right. And if you're looking for something specific, it's similar. And I always use this analogy is if you were to look around whatever room you're sitting in, or if you're listening to this in a car, and I tell you, name things that are red, right? So if you're sitting in your office and you start looking around the office, you're going to start looking for things that are red. And then if I tell you, look for things that are blue, you're going to start looking for blue things. And what you'll notice is the only thing that you were looking for was something that was red to begin with, or something that was blue to begin with. You didn't notice all of the other things, everything else that was a distraction. And so the more pinpoint we get, and you can find those things when you're looking for something specifically, you can start to find those things more easily, right? It becomes more apparent to you of, oh yeah, I didn't realize that this opportunity was here, or this red item was sitting in this on my shelf, or whatever it might be, right? And so number one is getting really crystal clear. And I got really crystal clear. At the beginning of my career, it was investors. I knew that I wanted to work with investors. So I started to do networking events. I started to go to them. I started to go to local REI meetups, real estate investing meetups. I started to have conversations on different Facebook groups and forums and podcasts and different things like that. And then I realized, like you said, that wasn't sustainable, right? I don't want to be closing 100 plus transactions a year, especially because working with investors in my immediate price range for my market, those long-term buy and hold investors, the average price point was around $125,000 to $150,000. So in order to make the income that I wanted, I needed to sell 100 homes, right? And so that was a switch in where I was at as well. Now it was nice to go through all those transactions because that means 10 to 12 deals pending every single month. It's baptism by fire, right? You get thrown into it and you have to make this work. And so it really made me mature as a real estate agent because I was doing all of these things. But then I transitioned, right? I'm like, okay, no, I don't want to be doing this. I want a higher price point. Who do I like to work with? Who are the people that I enjoy working with? So I changed my client avatar. And it was young professionals, whether young professionals as an individual or a couple or a young family who have outgrown their home. They have a home that they need to sell and they need to upsize, right? Like perfect world for me of where I wanted to be. That's where I'm at personally, young professional, young family. I've done that multiple times where we've upsized, my wife and I. And so that was a world that I started to get into. And from that point, I moved my average price point from $140,000. Even in my market, our average market price point is about 350,000, but my average sales price is closer to 500,000, right? Just by having that ideal client avatar. And so it allowed me to, number one, make more money doing half the amount of transactions, which was huge, giving me some of my time back. But number two, it positioned me where I don't have to work as often as I do. So I know that was a little bit of a long-winded answer. Just get really clear on who you want to work with. And then from there, it's how many rooms can you get into? How many conversations can you have? Is there a list of people that you can be calling? One thing that was beneficial for me is I started to use social media really well from the very beginning, just documenting the things that I was doing on a daily basis, right? Showings, inspections, even if I wasn't showing a client and I was learning how to open a lockbox at the very beginning, right? I'm learning how to open a lockbox. I'm learning how do I want to show this house? What are the areas I need to point out and like practice? And so I would go out and I would select 5 homes in my local market to go and do showings for. And it came off as if I was showing 5 different homes that day, right? I looked busy. I appeared to be busy and I was doing real estate. And then from there was, okay, how can I actually attract my ideal client? Again, at the very beginning, it was investors. So all of my social media was around investment. I even had clients who invested with me in my local market and then went and bought their own primary residence or sold their own primary residence with another agent because I was viewed as the investor guy. And so arguably too narrowed in, right? And so there is that piece of the puzzle, right? And so I shift all of my marketing, all of my advertising, all of my social media content, anything that I put out is this is my demographic. This is now my ideal client avatar. These are the people that I work with. They're people that have grown out of their home. They need to upsize, sell their home and buy a new one. And we can go into the weeds on anything like that, like lead magnets and funnels and everything that you put in your business to actually attract leads to you. That has been a major shift in my business as well because up front I was doing a lot of outbound and I realized that if I wasn't doing outbound, I wasn't closing deals. So if I went on a trip on a vacation for a week, guess what? That's great, but that's one less paycheck, two less paychecks, three less paychecks 30, 60, 90 days from now. And so I realized that, hey, my business is built on solely outbound. I wasn't attracting the way that I wanted to, which is when I got really intentional about social media and creating funnels and creating landing pages to bring people to me as the expert in that field within my local market.
The biggest thing that I see that you have is obviously you're smart and a desire to be successful and a good work ethic. Because another thing that I've read about you is your view on the importance of authenticity. And that is authenticity is everything. I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops when I go out on showings because I might be putting for sale signs in, whatever. I'm not a suit guy, right? And it, so generally I'm not a suit guy. So let's just say that, right? Ultimately, I'm attracting people who see me as an authentic person, not as a flashy whatever, and then that probably attracts a certain clientele. New York's a different market because really I built my business really on buyer's side from Zillow, right? Paying for Zillow, having people call me, showing all different price points. And I remember, in the beginning, it was probably more buyer focused. And then it was like 3 or 4 years in, then I did 52 deals and 26 were buyer sides and 26 were seller sides because generally people that are buyers become sellers. And it's interesting to me when people are like, oh, I only focus on listings or I only focus on buyers. And I'm like, I focus on clients and relationships. And so I've had examples of from Zillow, I'm now at 12 transactions from the beginning 8 years ago, 12 to 13 transactions of people, either those people, their family, and their friends and family. That's how I went out and prospected. So what you said is another way to prospect. Obviously, it's actually so I think everyone has to do what's important, how they want to run their business because I've never made an outbound call. I don't prospect. But what I do is I have money spent on internet searches, right? Where someone clicks on it, whether it's Google or Zillow or what have you, and then they start the journey that way. I do some other things, but ultimately it is important for you doing 100 transactions. It's great to get that under your belt. You're getting the experience, and then those are people who are going to want to continue to do business with you, or they're going to have friends and family that, oh, we have something that we have a deal that we got to call Nick, right? Nick's our guy. And so I think that's very important. And so I do feel that as you become more seasoned, you're able to determine clients that you want to work with, price points you want to work with. So I think that's all true. My price point happens to be a lot higher. While I've done things that are $10,000 sales, I've also done 4 million. And but ultimately, I'm assuming you're like this too. We don't treat people like the size of the transaction. We treat people like people. And I'll treat my $10,000 land sale the same as a $4 million home purchase because in the end of the day, I'm working for my review, right? When we're over, I want to be able to send them a link for Google reviews and that they're going to write, oh my God, this is an amazing experience because that's actually how I get more business. So you're probably more micro, or at least you were in the beginning of how you're lead acquiring. I'm probably more macro. But again, you got to do what works for you, and each market's different, right? I didn't want to be so micro because as a newer agent in towns that had agents that have been doing it for a fair amount of time, why would people want to work with me if they could work with people that own the town? And slowly I was able to get deals done and then get people to list with me. And then this year in my own town, I'm actually doing the highest sale price ever in my town. And next week I'm going to be closing on the highest per square foot, I believe, in my town. And so that's just with not really people probably even thinking that I'm doing that, which is fine, right? In the end of the day, it's about working with clients and closing business and closings are good, right? Because then our sellers get to sell, our buyers get to buy, and there happens to be a little bit of a commission check at the end of it for us to pay all those huge expenses we have of healthcare, of house expenses, of transportation costs, of taxes, our retirement fund. So there's a lot to be, that commission check has to get split a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how many ways it goes.
So that's another thing is, so what, how have you then made this? Do you have an L, are you in, do you have an LLC for your real estate business, or do you just work off of a 1099?
Yeah, so I have multiple business identities. So I have a holding company without getting too into the weeds of it, 'cause I don't claim to be an expert in any of it. I have a guy, right? I have a guy who helps me with that. But I have a holding company that holds all my identities and entities. So I have one for the real estate transactions. I have one for my real estate rental portfolio. I have one for my real estate coaching program and platform. And I have all of those under separate umbrellas. And to my understanding, the way that, obviously speak with a CPA and speak with attorneys on how to set those up and what to best do. But my understanding is within my position, having that was the best action plan for me because it allowed me to do some different things rather than doing it as an individual with just going into my personal bank account.
Partly it's because you have a plan and you're a professional, right? So that, I think that shows that. And I think it's also important because if you're trying to deal with investors, I tell this all the time to my investor, right? You're buying a property, you're going to use it as a rental, right? So how are you protecting yourself? How are you going to protect it in case someone slips and falls and doesn't have enough coverage and you don't have enough coverage and they want to come after your pension or your 401k? And so you need to protect yourself. So I think, again, some agents, all they might do is open doors, but our job is to make sure that people, especially ones that are first time investors, are you thinking about this and this? Because many people, there are a lot of television shows on fix it and flip it and $1 million listing and all those other things, which I enjoy watching them. They're fun television, but in the end of the day, it's television, right? And it's not necessarily what actually happens in the field. And there's a lot of risk, right? People get into, oh, I'm going to buy a property and what could go wrong? A lot could go wrong. You have a tenant that moves in there that never pays you, right? And trashes the place. And so are you prepared to hire eviction attorneys? Are you prepared so it's not always chocolates and roses and champagne. There's a lot of work in it. Real estate can be amazing, but it's not easy. It's hard work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And I think just the way that from just listening to you, what I find is that whether you were in fitness or real estate, it's all about being a professional, right? And being a professional not everyone can do it, right? Some of the problem in our industry is that there's a very low cost to entry, right, for a new agent to come in. A couple $100, you can take learning classes, you then take the test, you pass the test, and now what? And I think the National Association of Realtors says that it's like 85% of agents probably sell less than four. It might even be two transactions a year because everyone's, oh, it's so easy. And, oh, I'll sell my cousin's house, my aunt's house, whatever. But they're not really in the business being professional.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think professionalism and that authenticity, like we talked about, those are two of the biggest things that if you don't have those two, right? And that can look different for everyone, right? It can be based on your personality, but at the end of the day, I think authenticity comes just being your truest self and being true to your clients, making sure that they're getting the real you. And then the professionalism comes again is for us as real estate agents, it's all about making sure that our clients' needs and interests are before our own, right? We're a fiduciary for a reason. That's a word that kind of gets thrown around a lot, and it's within the licensing exam. If anybody remembers anything, it's probably that one word because it's the one that kind of carries throughout. We do need to be a fiduciary, which means we need to put our clients' needs and wants in front of our own. And that's our job. That's our job to do that. And I try to do that with everything that I do, right? The more professional that you appear, the more professional that you come across, it's going to inevitably bleed and lead into more business, more clients, more transactions, better communication, better relationships, all of those things we don't really think about it being so transactional within real estate. It's okay, next lead, next closing, next paycheck, but it's all the things around that professionalism speaks to that actually brings about more business and brings us those three things.
It's interesting because when we talk about fiduciary, you would have thought that the National Association of Realtors would have been our fiduciary, right? Because we were realtors and that's our guild. And yet my view is that they sold us down a river because all they cared about was to stop getting lawsuits and worked out a package that helped them, not helped us. And I don't even think it helped the buyers, right? Because in the end of the day, I think that what used to be more transparent is now more translucent, and it's more confusing for buyers ever, right? Now buyers, there's buyer agents agreement. What does that mean? Is it exclusive? Is it not exclusive? They got to sign these documents before they even start to see house number one, which are all great. And I guess that's when us being I don't mind any of those things. I don't think that the way that the market is now is actually better for buyers, although that's pretending what the lawsuit settlement was supposed to do. I don't think that's what it did. But I would say that it's probably made people that aren't as skilled at being realtors drop out because they weren't able to transition properly. And it probably allows more conversations for us to talk about how we run our business and our track record, which in the end of the day, when you compare that against people that are doing, 0 to 5 transactions a year and might have a side gig, this is their extra job. So I think for us, it's actually been better. I wish we weren't here. I just think that they took the easy way out, but thus we're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The top agents are going to come out on top, right? It comes to adapting. It comes with morphing with the times and figuring out what you need to do to transition and make it work. And like you said, agents who I think it was 74% of agents in 2024 did not close a single transaction. And so whether that's because they've been in the industry and been licensed for 50 years and haven't exercised, or whether that's they're part-time, or whether they just couldn't close any deals, whatever that looks like, right? The reality is 74% of real estate agents didn't close a single transaction. And so the agents, you will notice the top producing agents in every single market who had top of market share prior to buyer broker agreement, all of these changes coming from NAR, they rose, right? Like these agents who were top agents did not fall because of this. They actually took over more market share because some of the agents who didn't know how to be transparent, to have these conversations, they fell off. And it's a skill game, right? It's a skill game of, okay, how can I adapt over time with the times, even though I may not agree or I do agree with whatever's happening, right? It's irrelevant. You have to adapt. You have to make changes to what's happening. You have to be relevant with what's going on. And if you're not, you're going to fall behind. And top agents are going to continue to take market share. And the agents who aren't putting any intentional time, effort, and skill practice into it, they're going to fall off as they have been.
And it's the same thing with like politics, right? Where things are a little different now with this president as with past presidents. These are none of the things that we can do to change it. So why bother like getting in a huff about it? And it is what it is. And so obviously our job is as realtors is with the rules that are in place and the politicians that are in place, which might make people want to sell or buy or what have you. We're there to help with transactions, right? It's not our place to say if you should leave a place or move to a place, but clearly when other people have made those decisions, we're here to help them. So that's we're Switzerland, right? So the more that we can be Switzerland, I think the better of not being red, not being blue, whatever. Just we're like we are here to help all. I want to help all people, right? I don't care what you look like, your background. Our job is how do we get you to the closing table where again I can be your fiduciary to represent you and what your needs are, and let's get it done.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And like I said, and you hit on it as well, is no matter what's going on, if you're not adapting, if you're not changing, if you're not doing it, we could talk about it until we're blue in the face, but the reality is the reality. And unless you're going to adapt and change and take over that market share and take over the skills that are necessary, you're going to fall behind. It's just the way it is.
For me, I was newer during COVID, and everybody got scared and I never shut down. I actually did every year I kept growing in my 9 years of real estate. Every year I've done more than I've done the year before, every single year. And during COVID, there were ways that you were able to represent sellers and there were ways that you were able to represent buyers. And so I never had a shutdown. I just tell me what the game is, tell me what the rules are, and we're going to operate in the rules. From a listing standpoint, the rule was generally any owner could show their house at any point, right? So even technically an open house, I'm not allowed to run the open house, but if they wanted to have people to come into their house from 11 to 1, whether they mask or whatever, all that masking and gloving and all that was done. It was the rule though was that I couldn't run it, but the seller could because the governments generally didn't want to take over for landowners. So then you made it happen. And then for buyers to go see houses. You couldn't tour them, but you were allowed to drive in a separate car outside of them, and they were allowed to go. And many times people were giving you the combos. It's empty, you can go in. And so I was able to continue to take listings and continue to get things done within the rules. And then the NAR changes are really okay, here's what the rules is. Let's adapt and let's make it work. And ultimately, people still need to buy and sell, and it's our
Yeah.
job to make sure that that the rules and laws are being followed, and that we're representing people. So it's I don't see that there's really a difference. It's just the more things change, the more things stay the same. But you need to be changing to continue along the process.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, like you said, people still need to buy, people still need to sell. The question is, are you the agent that's working with them? And
Exactly.
how can we put ourselves in those rooms?
What are you seeing? What do you see now with the people that are buying and selling? Are generally it's throughout all ages and all everything, right? So, what are some of the things that you're seeing? Is there anything that you're seeing that's different, like now as opposed to a year ago?
Yeah, obviously, ever since and a little bit more than a year ago when interest rates went up, if people didn't really have a need, they weren't going to move because if they did own a home, renters aside, right? Let's talk about homeowners, whether they bought their home 30 years ago or 3 years ago. Most people, if they had a loan on the home, they refinanced into a lower rate. And so why would I get out of my 2 or 3% interest rate if I don't have to? Knowing that most people fall on that as a safety cushion. Now we could get into the weeds of that conversation and interest versus equity and appreciation and all of those things and where your money actually lies. But what I've noticed in the last year or two has been people aren't necessarily making a move unless they really have to. And those are either relocations for job opportunities. Those are either growing or subtracting in family, whether that's getting married or having a divorce, whether that's having kids or becoming empty nesters, or just a need for a financial situation of this came up and I can no longer afford it, or hey, this just came up, got a bonus, got a job, got a pay increase, and so we want to take advantage of that. And the biggest thing is people aren't moving unless they have to. And so again, it comes down to how do we actually figure out the true motivation behind why people are moving. And I think that's what has set me apart and the agents that I help and coach set them apart as well, is because it's not just taking something at face value, it's actually understanding the motivation behind a move. How do
Well,
we actually,
right.
yeah,
Some of the motivations that you talked about, death, transfers, those are happening anyway. And regardless of what interest rates are, those are still going to happen from a
yeah,
selling standpoint. But, but in some of those cases, the people that are who have been in a house for a long time might not have a mortgage anymore. So they don't care about necessarily losing an interest rate, but they might need to get an interest rate on the other side. But sometimes a lot of that would might be a downsizer, right? A downsizer might be able to sell and get cash and then buy a smaller property with no mortgage. So those are the cases where technically that wouldn't matter, right? I think where it would matter potentially is somebody that needs to upsize their house where the family's growing and they might decide not to sell their house and do renovations instead, which is generally a better thing, right? Because obviously renovations is if you're the owner and it's probably less costly than getting involved in buying and selling and commissions and all the taxes and all that other stuff. But I think it really depends. And so what my view was that I always talked about with interest rates is interest rates go up and down, right? And historically, over like the last 6 years, I think 6.5, 7% is actually the historic average. We just got spoiled, and especially younger people, right, who were used to seeing rates in the fours and the threes and the upper twos, thinking that was sustainable. It really wasn't. It was really the government was really subsidizing those rates because that's not the real cost of money. But I remember my parents bought one of the houses they bought in 1979. I think interest rates were 17%. But again, rates go up and down. And while if someone's in an eight right now, while we can't tell them what the future is going to be, rates do go up and down. And then obviously you would be able to refinance if rates ever came down. But the other thing though is people who were selling houses now were getting an obscene amount of return on their sale. So if you're selling your house for 30% or 40% more than what you paid for, maybe you can absorb a 3% interest rate. That's a short term thing, which interest is the rate of interest is tax deductible. generally. Obviously, it depends on everyone in there. So there's a lot of ways of talking to make sense of things. And there's also things that like sometimes you're able to get like a SEMA, right? Where you're able to buy someone else's house and take over their interest rate. So it's not easy to do, but every now and then you're able to do that. So again, through open communication and talking and really being the fiduciary for your, in this case, a buyer or potentially a seller, you're able to maybe work through things and get people to say, oh, and then let's bring in the expert. Let's bring in a tax advice. Let's bring in a lawyer, because maybe people's perceptions of why they couldn't do something changes when you actually get to the facts.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
So that's just an example. There's always examples, right, in our business. Like you do an inspection on a house and it doesn't go so well. Does that mean you walk away? Maybe it does, but maybe, that seller now didn't know that they had bad septic and now they do have it. And now they probably, and if they agree that it's bad, are going to have to state their property condition disclosure report to say that something's broken. Why don't we just fix it? Why don't we fix it and move on with the transaction? So that's where it's all about relationships, right? And it's about dealing with people, because sometimes you can get hotheads and they don't want to be open minded. But if you can get people to talk about things, and you wanted to sell, this person wanted to buy, how do we still get everyone to the closing table where everyone's needs are met? So that's what we do really on a day-to-day basis. The opening the doors is, it would be nice if we could just give out someone a combo lock. They go in the house and whatever, because that's the least of what we do. Everything else is why people want to work with Nick or Danny, because those are the things that we're going to have their back and make sure that we're helping them out.
Yep. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
The podcast started a little over a year ago. I'm about to write a book. I've written the book, The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker, which are about interesting tales along the way of getting to the closing table. Give me an example of something that was just out of control that you can't believe or people laugh about still, for either a listing that you had or the first time you were in a house, closing, or something. I'm talking about I things from skulls and other crazy stuff like that. So give me an example of something that was interesting in one of your deals.
Yeah, not so much interesting or funny, but it's something that, again, I mentioned I work with investors a lot early on. And in my local market, there were areas where I was working with long-term buy and hold. I was working with fix and flip. I was working with multifamily, single family, all of these things. And a lot of people get into the Detroit market for the cost of entry, right? You could buy a house, if you'll call it a house, for $4,000, and anything up to $1 million, $2 million. And so I was in the middle of working with investors and had a transaction where, and it was pretty common to go to a house and you get under contract, whether you're going to the showing or you're going to the inspection. And it's pretty common to see maybe squatters or different things, that a pit bull locked in a cage in the basement where you weren't expecting it. And in one occasion, like, that was pretty common. I have my CPL I carry for that purpose, just in case anything ever was needed. And I remember one inspection I went to, and I worked really closely and still do with my go-to inspector. We were going to the property and we both got out of the car and had this off feeling, right? It was in a neighborhood that wasn't great, right? A little rundown. And we got out of the car, we both looked at each other and had the same feeling. We said, hey, you know what? Let's be a little bit cautious with this one. And so we went to the front door, and like typical, we both went in. He carries, I carry, and so we think we're safe there. And we're doing our lap around the house, go on the main floor, everything is fine. Go on the upper floor, everything's fine. Smells like a little bit of marijuana, but everything's like, all right, not uncommon. Right. And so we then go down to the basement and we walk right into a drug deal that's happening. And immediately people are drawing guns on us. And we're like, okay, like, we made it halfway down the stairs. We had to evacuate as quickly as we could, bolted out of there, got in the car, drove off, watching behind our back. It was again, not funny, not my favorite story, but that was one that I was into.
Yeah, the only thing I carry would be like maybe chapstick or something like that. So I'm in trouble. I can't really pull that out, and anyone's going to get nervous about that. So
Yeah.
that's certainly my view. Is you always smell the body before you see the body, but a dead body is less problematic than a live drug
Yeah.
deal going down
Yeah.
with people drawing weapons.
Yeah, that was only one of the reasons why I shifted where I was, what I was doing, who I was working with, what I wanted to do, and I couldn't get out of that situation any faster.
Exactly. I'm glad that you and your A+ inspector made it out okay. And it certainly happens. We're dealing with real people. We have real life situations, and that's part of what we signed up for. It's every day it's different. So that's a cool thing. So Nick, I appreciate the time. I'm sure we could talk for hours about real estate, and maybe one of us has to go out and close something now so we can pay for the expenses of the day. But I want to thank you again for your time. Can you just let everyone know either how to contact you, either to check your website out, or if there's an agent that's interested in coaching, how they can meet you?
Yeah. So I always recommend people follow me on Instagram, number one. So it's Nick Harris underscore realtor. Nick Harris underscore realtor. You can find me there on Instagram. And then if you want to check out my website and hear a little bit more about what I do to coach agents and some of our testimonials from agents we're working with, that's wealthyrealtormethod.com. And I'd love to chat, have a conversation with you either way, whether it's through the website or whether it's on Instagram. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Great, thank you. Everyone, Nick's been had a lot of tidbits. Nick Harris, thank you again for your time. For everyone, this is Daniel Berger with the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Until next time, thanks for listening in. Thanks for joining me on the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York Realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.